How is it rocking, Dwayne Nation? Stay here because we are just about to get underway. In the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. We put out weekly sports content, and we want to continue to build up Dwayne Nation and the brand that is Dwayne Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dwayne Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and we are back for another episode. We're going to discuss the rankings, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. This episode right here will be quarterbacks, the guys that are going to be at the top of your lineups every week. Obviously, the more headline names and fantasy, they don't go at the very top of your drafts, but guys that it's pretty deep this year. The quarterback room is pretty deep. But how you doing, Genoa? And what are your thoughts on the quarterbacks this season?
Yo, Dewey Nation, Justin. We're less than a week away. We're pretty much a week and 2 days away from kickoff on Thursday night. That's when fantasy officially starts. So, hey, it's good to be here, Justin, to discuss the top 10 quarterbacks. Hey, Justin, are you excited? I just got to ask you. We are just less than a week, 2 weekends away from kickoff. And it's just, dang, I'm so excited, Justin, that fantasy is officially back. But, hey, the quarterbacks that we're going to get into today, one of them will be playing on Thursday night. I'm pretty confident, Justin. So it's really excited to, yeah.
No, I'm so excited for football season. Drafts have been flying. I had 3 last week and got a couple more down the line. And it really, the most exciting thing sometimes is picking that quarterback. You know, those exciting people that are obviously on the field every single play of a football game. And there's some really good picks out there this year. I don't think you can really go wrong. Honestly, you could start one of the top 15 fantasy quarterbacks and not be too crazy worried about it. You know, guys that we're not mentioning on this episode because we are doing a top 10 quarterbacks: Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, even Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert's fallen down the pipeline.
Yeah, those are late rounders. Late
right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, and Jaden Daniels barely misses out on our list. There's just so many good quarterbacks, but here are the top 10 because these guys you're gonna want and you're gonna be confident in having them in your lineup every week. These aren't guys that are that streaming quarterback kind of value. It's guys that you should be ready to rock with whoever they're playing. So we're gonna count down from 10. How we formed this list here at Dwayne Sports is I made a top 10 list. Genoa here made a top 10 list, and we averaged them out, and that's how we got our numbers. So I will give y'all what we had at number 10 to average is the Green Bay Packers quarterback, Jordan Love. Looking at Jordan Love this year, obviously he came on last year in a very spectacular way. It was very impressive. He's now kind of in this realm of CJ Stroud, Jordan Love. Maybe some people are throwing Anthony Richardson as a new wave of quarterbacks. New franchise guys. Obviously, Jordan Love just got paid big time, and his talent around him is super, super interesting. None of his wide receivers and tight ends are big names. CJ Stroud's got Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, and it's crazy to hear all those big names. Jordan Love doesn't have that. He's got Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Luke Musgrave, one of your sleepers, Josh Jacobs out of the backfield. But it's all really good talent, and they're in a division where they will be playing through week 17 and 18 because Detroit's going to give them a run for that division, lead. And so I'm pretty big. I'm pretty big on. I know you are as well. So I'm going to throw it to you. What do you think about Jordan Love?
Oh, man, I love Jordan Love. I got him in one of our drafts this past weekend, so I'm very excited. Looking at the targets he has there, he has Watson, he has Dobbs. Those are two, when they're healthy, Justin, those are two receivers that can put wide receiver 1 numbers. Each year, I know 2 years ago, Watson kind of had that breakout when Rodgers' last year. And the year after, kind of Dobbs broke out in the beginning with Jordan Love, and he kind of fell off. But those two wide receivers, when healthy with the quarterback like Jordan Love, can put up numbers, and that boosts the value of Jordan Love. And not only that, my sleeper, Justin Musgraves, I feel like he can be a great red zone target, potential to get 9 touchdowns a season. Not saying he goes over 1,000 yards, but he gets about 50 to 60 catches, a pretty decent, tight in there. McBride kind of breakout late in the season, perhaps. So Jordan Love is definitely a quarterback that can be real viable there in fantasy as well, Justin. The Packers always historically develop wide receivers great. And it's just I mean, it's the Jordy Nelsons, the Greg Jennings, the James Jones. It's like, and they had Devontae Adams, and then and it's like now they have, as well as Jalen Reed. I didn't even mention him. So that really boosts, Jordan Love's numbers, as well as he's underrated as rushing the ball. So he's very an underrated quarterback, broke out late in the year. And so now we have high expectations going into this year to lead the Packers.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how he's up there as the top 2 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. Is he tied for top?
Mm-hmm.
Yet he's going here at quarterback 10. But we're both very confident in having him as our starting quarterback 1 for fantasy this year. I did my own, strength of schedule as well, and out of like the top 25 quarterbacks that can really, be viable for fantasy football, I have Jordan Love as the easiest regular season schedule, for quarterbacks.
Justin, can I say he finished last year? I'm looking at the rankings for highest fantasy quarterbacks. He was 5th. And He didn't have a great start to the season. I know he had a stinker on a Monday night in Vegas, if you don't remember that, Justin.
Right.
So he finished top 5 in fantasy scoring there, over with the average of 19, almost 20. So that's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah. And I mean, that was essentially, it's rookie starting quarterback season. Obviously, he's been in the league as a backup. But this is that first year he was, touted as the franchise quarterback. So big things for Jordan Love. If you are in that mindset, hey, I'm going to wait on my quarterback, Jordan Love is that prime guy you can get in the 7th, 8th, 9th round, and be really happy with it. So Jordan Love at 10. Jano, you want to take us with number 9?
Number 9. Hey, I love me them boys in Cincinnati. So, hey, it's only right that we talk about Joe Burrow there. Man, I hope that Joe Burrow, I just want to say that I hope Joe Burrow is healthy, because I'm not going to lie, the NFL is so much fun when the Bengals are like kind of in the race. I just love, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They're just a cool, duo, even though I'm a Texans fan. So I love Joe Burrow, and I kind of hope they get things settled out there with their wideouts in Cincinnati, because if so, they're a great unit. And I also like that they have a Jermaine Burton from Alabama there. So I feel like that's another guy that can replace, Tyler Boyd, who's in Tennessee now. So I feel like Jermaine Burton can be that pretty cool wide receiver 3 there that Joe Burrow can rely on. And I think they have, was it Gesicki there as tight end in Cincinnati?
Gesicki,
yeah. So, I mean, hey, I've always, Gesicki's always been, he's had those good years in Miami, but he's been off since then. So hopefully all those targets there can boost Joe Burrow, and we can have Joe Burrow from 2 years ago. He'd be a great, fantasy quarterback for sure. He deserves 9, but it should be 6 or 5, Justin. But since he was injured, I guess it's only right that we put him at 9, though, going into this year.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, with Joe Burrow. Obviously, he's a pocket passer. He's not going to give you that rushing upside on the ground, but his weapons are still super, super valuable. Hopefully, Jamar comes to practice. T. Higgins is in there. Jermaine Burton's a sleeper wide receiver. Obviously, they lost Tyler Boyd. They lost Joe Mixon. They bring in Zach Moss, who's not going to help too much in the passing game, but Chase Brown has some, receiving chops to him. And, him and Jordan Love are kind of a coin flip, in my opinion. You could put either one of them in front of each other. I'd argue maybe, currently I have Jordan Love 1 spot above Joe Burrow in my rankings personally. But Burrow, he's still a great quarterback, and he's got a lot to do with those wide receivers.
I must say, Justin, I would actually put Joe Burrow over the guy we're about to talk about next here, because even with this next guy's new, wide out there, it's gonna be fun to watch. But I do think that Joe Burrow has the next guy. So I got to talk about this next guy though, Justin. What do you think about this?
Go ahead, jump on.
I'm gonna go right into Kyler Murray, because I'm looking on this list, Justin, and I feel like, you know what, I do see that Kyler Murray's going over Joe Burrow, but I feel like Joe Burrow has more targets. He's got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. When they're there together, they each have 1,000 yards, 5+ touchdowns. Whenever they're healthy, the Bengals are good, and that's how the Bengals were able to make 2 AFC Championship appearances, Justin. And so I feel like Joe Burrow should be kind of up there. There's a couple guys that we'll get to this list. I actually put Joe Burrow over in fantasy perspective, but that's just me. With Kyler Murray, though, Justin, I guess I'm going to get right into it. I do like Kyler Murray this year, though, with Maserati Marv there as his next wideout. And, hey, Trey McBride, Justin, can really break out. As we're going to talk about tight ends later, he's going to be one of those guys that we get right into real early. And I feel like, with the Cardinals offense, they're kind of developing in the right way. I kind of like what Jonathan Gannon's kind of doing there. He is from that Sirianni, Frank Wright kind of tree. And so I do have potential there to be a pretty high scoring offense. So I do like Kyler Murray as well as a rusher. He is a top 3 rushing quarterback along with Fields and of course Lamar Jackson. He can also get 100 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and that helps you fantasy wise, Justin. Because if you get bonus points for rushing yards, Kyler Murray's a candidate to get over 100 rushing yards. You know what I'm saying? So so definitely Kyler Murray's a threat as well as a rusher. But I'm really optimistic though about the Cardinals' offense though. And so I know you haven't won in leagues, and I do think that Kyler Murray is going to be a great daily fantasy guy, a guy that's going to be kind of cheap, but he's good on the price wise on like DraftKings, but then he's going to be a great value. He'll get you to 35, 40 points. So definitely Kyler Murray is a slept on quarterback this year though as well.
No, so now that you mentioned a guy who I'm very, very high on, I currently have him as my quarterback 6 in rankings. I'm very it's certain that I will be putting him up the ranks as we get closer to the season. With Kyler Murray, just as you mentioned, upgrade at wide receiver, the best wide receiver in the class, arguably the best wide receiver over the last 5 years coming into the draft. I'm not saying NFL, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is set up with a great quarterback. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in this league. And for fantasy purposes, he has the rushing that you were mentioning. And that's not to be understated. In fantasy, that is like gold. That is pure gold. And with Trey McBride coming into, his 3rd season now, that is breakout central time for tight ends. And in our league, in our big league that we just had this weekend, I did draft Kyler, and I was able to stack him with Trey McBride. And I come away very happy with that decision. If you look at the division, the Seahawks, hopefully they might be getting better on defense this year, but it wasn't crazy pretty last year. San Francisco as well, they're back and forth. They lose their defensive coordinator. And then was the Rams. The Rams, we don't know what they were a subpar defense last year.
They'll be okay. It's just they lose Aaron Donald. So it's like, but I feel you.
They're losing that culture in the locker room with Aaron Donald. And then just even past that, with the Cardinals' lack of defense, that's going to be where they're going to need Kyler more and more. That's why I have him over Joe Burrow. They're both going to throw a lot. Joe Burrow will throw more passing yards in 2024 if both are healthy. But with Kyler's rushing upside, that's why I have him above him. Moving to, quarterback number 7. Our average, we're pretty different on this guy. So this guy that we have here, I have him all the way up at quarterback 3, and you have him at quarterback 8. So this is Anthony Richardson, Indianapolis Colts quarterback. Is this are some of your thoughts here because of the preseason struggles, the injury history? What are your thoughts?
I'm honestly not worried about Anthony Richardson, to be honest. I don't really believe in the preseason struggles. That's what training camp is all for. You're kind of just getting back into your groove, especially with his scenario. He just got out of a season-ending shoulder injury. And so thankfully, he'll be ready to go. It's just how to, your throwing mechanics, no matter what side it is, Justin. So I'm confident, not only that, he has talent around him. I love Jonathan Taylor. They did draft Adonai Mitchell to go along with Pittman. So I do think that's going to be an early connection off as well. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they have at the tight end position, Justin, because there was some releases this weekend there in Indianapolis. But it's going to be interesting to see what they can develop there. Anthony Richardson could be a great rusher in the football. He kind of reminds me of Cam Newton, the way he rushes, and he kind of brings me fantasy Cam Newton. So he kind of reminds me of like the newer generation fantasy Cam Newton. That's like the best scenario I have for him. And I am confident with him. Honestly, he'd probably be higher if he didn't get injured, if you really think about it. I'm really optimistic about Anthony Richardson this year.
Yeah, it was a very big shock to me over, our drafts this weekend, how far he actually dropped in some of them. I think he went in the 8th round, which was a surprise to me just because I have pretty high hopes for him. With the rushing upside, as I mentioned with Kyler, Anthony Richardson has more of a touchdown upside, like how Jalen Hurts has it.
Right.
With a great offensive mind in Shane Steichen. Hopefully they gave it to some Jonathan Taylor so he doesn't bust this season. But with AR, it seems like there's a lot of good things where he's going to have a really, really high floor every single week. Adonai Mitchell already showed some flashes in the preseason with Anthony Richardson. Michael Pittman just got paid. He's going to be there. And then Jonathan Taylor's healthy. We can see that dynamic duo come out. And with the defense is going to be subpar this year. There's nothing too special going on with them. And Steichen's going to lead them to some really big wins in a really tight division that the AFC South's going to have this year. So I'm pretty
Mhm.
pretty high on Anthony Richardson. That's why I have him at 3 over a guy like Patrick Mahomes, which is
Ooh.
going to be a shock to some. So
Hot
moving to
take.
moving to 6 though, we have Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys. He gets his number one guy, signed on the dotted line. CD Lamb is back, hopefully in camp shortly, and right in time for the season to start. Obviously, I do think there's going to be some early on struggles. First
Yeah.
week they go to Cleveland. That's already a tough game in and of itself for that, against that defense.
Yeah. In the
But
dog pound.
also
Yeah.
with CD Lamb coming on, no real training camp, reps. So there's some worry with him. He's not going to run as much, but he's also in a contract year, which we're really interested in to see if he stays in Dallas. But besides the point, Mike McCarthy's fighting for his job, and
Oh yeah.
it's going to be hyper target CD Lamb and Jake Ferguson. So that's what has me interested, and especially how last year, the back half of last year was so impressive by him. He was with the quarterback 3. That's why we have him here, at 6. But what are your thoughts with Dak?
Yeah, with Dak Prescott, I think he's falling a little bit under the radar. But Justin, I just want to mention before I get into my take, Dak Prescott was a top 3 fantasy scoring quarterback last year. Okay, top 3 fantasy scoring quarterback there. I do have the rankings on me. I just want to say, he was the 3rd highest scoring quarterback, and he did, he was involved in a lot of shootouts, and he's in a division that might require a little bit more now that the Commanders have Jaden Daniels there leading the way. And who knows, maybe the Giants can do something. We're hoping, right? We're optimistic. We
Right.
hope, right? So pretty much, the Eagles are going to be right in the thick of it. So, so there's definitely going to require Dak Prescott to play well every game. You mentioned that he's going to be in a contract year. So now that he has CD Lamb back, they're able to keep Brandon Cooks. And you mentioned Jake Ferguson. There's guys like Jalen Tolbert and Kayvontae Turpin that, I think he was in the XFL, Justin. He was a star. He's been in the league for 2.5 years now. He needs to finally break out. The Cowboys are relying on him. So let's see what they can do. Maybe they just signed Dalvin Cook, I think yesterday. So maybe they can use him as a receiving option since they're kind of loaded at the depth chart position with running backs with, Deuce Vaughn, Dowdle, and Zeke, returning. So, I mean, I'm not, a lot of people aren't optimistic about Dak, but, you do have to believe that the Cowboys are going to be in a lot of shootouts. They're going to be in a lot of primetime games, big night games where Dak Prescott might be playing from behind. And that's really where the Cowboys get their shine. So CD Lamb signing that record-breaking deal, he's going to want to show everybody that he's the best wide receiver. So it kind of goes hand in hand with Dak Prescott. So I think it's only right to put a top 3 scorer right here, and I think that's a great spot for him, Justin.
The only concerns I have, injuries are always concerned. If CD Lamb were to go down at all, I think Dak Prescott's his stock would plummet pretty largely. He would fall out of my top 10 at fantasy quarterback. So the fact that he really only has CD Lamb and some Jake Ferguson hype is behind it has me a little worried. Guys like guys that we mentioned earlier, oh my gosh, Joe Burrow and Jordan Love, they have a plethora of options. I know if Jamar went down, that would definitely hurt Joe Burrow's stock, but at least he has T. Higgins to fall back on. Anthony Richardson doesn't really need super great wide receivers to be productive, and Kyler Murray has always been pretty solid without a star one. But Dak, we haven't seen that before. So if you were to lose CD and have to rely on Cooks and Ferguson, there would be some worries there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But moving to our quarterback 5, so we hit the top 5 now. This is where I think there's a next tier, kind of like somewhat of a tier break. And to start that tier, we have C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans, our beloved Texans. He comes in at 5. I had him at 7, and you have him at 3. So we are also kind of split on this one. It's a lot of nitpicking, but my only doubts with CJ could be that he doesn't have much rushing upside. And the way that this offense has improved as well as the defense, I think there's a good chance that Houston is in leads this season more and more than they were, definitely more than they were last year. And they don't have to rely on CJ's arm for most of the game, because some of the biggest games for the Texans last year against the Bengals, a tight one all the way through the end, Tampa Bay, he's had some really close games last year, a lot of one possession affairs that I don't think will happen this season. I'm still high on him as a pretty solid middle quarterback 1, but there is some doubt on that regard. What are your thoughts?
My only doubt, Justin, there is our offensive line. As a Texans fan, I'm a little concerned of that offensive line. I'm not sure they're as established as like the Eagles or the Chiefs. I even think that the Chargers have a way better offensive line as well as the Ravens, and it kind of concerns me when they're playing opposing pass rush. So that's when it's going to concern me when they're playing the Colts, because I feel like there could be some low scoring games. Yes, I love CJ Stroud. He does have a lot of targets there, but it's just like the offensive line just concerns me just a little bit, Justin. But if CJ Stroud is healthy, I pray health for him all season. He could end up, Justin, a top 3 quarterback, though. I'm going to argue that he's going to be actually in many more one possession games. I feel like every game of this season might be a one possession game with the Texans, and I feel like CJ Stroud's going to be playing to win it, and it's obviously he's going to be playing to win it, but it's like it's going to be back and forth. I feel like the Texans defense is there, but they're not 100% established yet. I feel like they're a few pieces away. So I feel like there's going to be times where they might get themselves in some shootouts. But CJ has Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs and Dalton Schultz, and it goes along. We love John Mechie, and Robert Woods is still on the team, so that's a set right there. I'm very optimistic about our tight ends after Schultz with Brevin Jordan and Kate Stover. Those are guys that I'm very familiar with. Not to mention Steven Sims. Like, it's just a great roster. Like, hopefully that CJ Stroud can have an MVP caliber year, and hopefully the Texans can do great things. And I just hope CJ Stroud has a historic year and with that offense. And so it's just very happy to be a Texans fan right now. But as a fantasy as well, you're excited that there's a Texans quarterback that's there, and he has a great, setup for him. Not only that, D'Amico Ryans is a great coach, and he's showing promise. So there's nothing but love. As long as we keep CJ healthy, Justin, he will be a top 3 fantasy quarterback, I believe.
Wow, that's big talk for
Yeah.
CJ. It's well deserved. Best rookie season by a quarterback we've seen. And he is money. He is money. I'm just looking at strictly fantasy, and his lack of rushing. His schedule is tough. The Texans now have a number 1 division lead kind of schedule.
Yeah.
That backstretch with Baltimore, Kansas City, Miami, those are like 3 tough games right in the thick of the fantasy playoffs, which you could argue is a good thing if you want really intense close games. But yeah, so CJ Stroud comes in at R5 collectively.
Yeah, the schedule's tough, Justin. I'm just looking at the schedule, and it's tough. I just want to say that.
No, that's what they brought on themselves. Obviously, winning the division last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they've also improved. They've improved tremendously all around the rock. So, CJ at 5. We're moving to 4, where we have Lamar Jackson. Yeah. You have him as your quarterback 5. I do as well, but averages get him to 4. And Lamar, I'm trying to play both sides here. At least give the Dwayne Nation kind of whether it's good and what is bad for Lamar. Obviously, we know his rushing upside is phenomenal. He's probably the best rushing quarterback we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. His passing is fine. He's got Mark Andrews back off of injury, as well as Zay Flowers in year 2. But they also bring in Derrick Henry. Mm-hmm. My 2 concerns. The offensive line has deteriorated a bit. They lost 3 starting offensive linemen, so there's already a concern there. And I'm kind of just looking at history. We mentioned this a handful of episodes ago when he won the MVP back in 2019. He came back in 2020. He slimmed down, and then he started playing worse. He got injured, and it just wasn't as good for them. They also lose a lot of their personnel and their coaching staff. So there's definitely concern there, but with that rushing upside, that's why we have him so high.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ever leave Lamar Jackson. As far as fantasy, you can't leave him off the top 5 because you mentioned his rushing upside is absolutely the best we've ever seen, Justin. You can give him the title that he is the best rushing fantasy quarterback of all time. This is a fantasy episode, so you have to give the title to the best rushing quarterback of all time. So he fits both titles there. So if we're talking fantasy, he's going to get you rushing touchdowns. He's going to get you rushing yards. I love how, in our leagues, we've had incentives for over rushing yards. And as a quarterback, that's what you need. That's what gives the quarterback a boost. So you have to, be optimistic about his targets, which, Justin, you and I have some question there with the targets. Yes, we like Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews is definitely a top 3 tight end, but it's like, who else can step up there? We're familiar with Bateman. I'm not going to get into that yet. Maybe Wallace or Walker can kind of step up. We know what we're getting with Aguilar. Aguilar has those moments where he'll catch a 45, 50-yard touchdown, and then you won't hear from him for 5 weeks. So it's just like he's older there in age. So there's got to be other guys that step up there for John Harbaugh in that offense. Obviously, we love Derrick Henry, but that doesn't help out Lamar Jackson's stock. So just want to say that there. That's for Derrick Henry in the running back world. So in fantasy. So that's the one concern I have. Obviously, Derrick Henry could regress a little in touches just because he's getting there with age. But the only thing, Justin, is the wide receivers. How can they step up for Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, well, it's kind of strange that everybody would agree and say that Mark Andrews is the number one target for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And it was actually when Andrews was injured last year where Lamar had that just brief, a couple week, 3 week stretch where he was on fire. And that's kind of what it gave him that MVP nod, even though it's kind of undeserved.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be Christian McCaffrey.
That was Christian McCaffrey, yeah.
Right. But Lamar definitely has some concerns there. The only thing that could kind of flip that on its head, they lost so much defensive personnel that maybe they have to lean on Lamar more in games because people are scoring more. Because Baltimore was very impressive on the defensive side last year. Like we've mentioned a couple episodes how they shut down 49ers that one game, just absolutely dominated. They had many games like that. They did that to Detroit as well. I do not see that happening at all this year compared from last year to this year. They lose Clowney. They lost Geno Stone, safety. They lost their defensive coordinator. So they're going to be in games more and more one possession affairs where Lamar's going to either have to throw it or run it. So that's an upside looking for Lamar if you think he can improve in 2024. Moving to quarterback 3, I'll let you take it. Yeah.
Justin, absolutely. I have the honors to introduce the number 1 scoring quarterback in last year's season fantasy with Josh Allen there, Justin. He averages out to number 3 on our list, but he was number 1, like I just mentioned, in fantasy scoring last year. And I do have to mention, even though Diggs is on my Texans, he did have a back half of the season where he did not perform as a number 1 wide receiver, Justin. Mm-hmm. But Josh Allen was still able to finish as the number 1 fantasy there scoring quarterback there in fantasy. And, looking at what he has there, I just want to get into Dalton Kincaid, right? I feel like with Kincaid, he can honestly be a top 3 tight end. He can have a Laporta type season, even though Kincaid is not a rookie. I feel like he can have a Laporta breakout. And I feel like that helps Josh Allen. Obviously, we just talked about Lamar Jackson's rushing upside there in fantasy. Josh Allen has a great one as well on paper. Obviously when we look at the field, he's not as good as Kyler or Lamar. But hey, he's a great fantasy running quarterback and he gets those rushing touchdowns. So that boosts his value. I just mentioned Kincaid. And then we have to look at his wide receivers. I think they have a better set of wide receivers than Baltimore does. So, looking at what James Cook can do out of the backfield, Justin, he's more of a receiving. He's like a hybrid. He can receive and he can rush. It's really, rare sometimes for Cooks to always get 100 rushing yards. He's always like the 50 and 60 guy. Like he's over 100 like total yards from the scrimmage. So I feel like that helps Josh Allen now. Shakir and Keon Coleman. Obviously, we talked about Curtis Samuel as a potential breakout there. So I feel like those are 3 wide receivers that can boost Josh Allen's, fantasy stock. But after that, Justin, it's really tough to see. Like if an injury were to happen, I feel like it would throw Buffalo off. So I really feel like they got to make a trade midway the season, kind of like the Cowboys did many years ago for Amari Cooper, where Dak Prescott was struggling, offensively. And then, Jerry says, okay, week like 8 or 9, let's get Amari Cooper. And then Dak Prescott kind of went on and led the Cowboys to the playoffs. So Amari Cooper put on many great seasons there in Dallas after that, still doing it well in Cleveland. So I kind of feel like that's what Buffalo needs to do to kind of boost Josh Allen's stock. Make a trade for a wide receiver. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe get Ayuk. Just do it or something. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, but definitely that'd be something, right? Yeah, Buffalo, just do that. Pull the trigger. Get Ayuk. Just get Josh Allen Ayuk. You know what I'm saying? But anyways,
why not?
Right now, hey, Three Nation is calling you out, Buffalo, calling you out. If Ayuk doesn't want to go to Buffalo, I mean, man, I would be like, wow. If he doesn't want to play with Josh Allen, I would be shocked.
Such a drama queen, this guy. But no, with Josh Allen, to me, I'd argue he's one of my bigger fades in 2024 fantasy. Yeah. I have him at quarterback 2, so I'm not obviously you wouldn't look at it and see that in the rankings, but where he's going in drafts, he's still going as if he had all the targets he had last year, and he's lost a ton of targets. 317 beautiful vacated targets leave and for this season in 2024. And we are high. I'm high on Dalton Kincaid. He's my guy at tight end for this season. And the worries I have, though, is actually with their offensive scheme. After Joe Brady took over the offense in 2023, they started running the ball a hell of a lot more than they
Yeah,
did before then. Obviously, they did start winning games, but
yeah,
that doesn't always equate to fantasy points for Josh Allen. And heading into 2024, we saw Joe Brady have really some quick success when he was with the Panthers early on, and then it seemed like NFL teams figured out his scheme, and that's why he eventually got fired from that position.
yeah.
And I'm not going to say Joe Brady's getting fired in 2024, but I think teams will start to figure it out again. That's kind of how I feel about Washington's Cliff Kingsbury. I think he might go through this year and kind of surprise people with his offensive,
Yeah.
air raid offense, and then next year, maybe the year after that, it will be figured out, and then they will shut that down. And I think that's exactly what's kind of in line for the Buffalo Bills, and they just don't have as many targets.
I will say one thing, Justin. He does have a great week one schedule. He's home with Arizona. I feel like Buffalo can get some stops. And once Josh Allen gets on fire, he kind of doesn't stop. So he'll put up 40 piece there up there in Buffalo and Orchard Park. So I do like the week one matchup though, Justin. I will say so. It has potential.
No, and you could argue, okay, his first 3 weeks he plays Arizona, Miami, Jacksonville,
Yeah,
all games where he's gonna have to throw it a very good amount.
yeah,
Why not go through the first 3 weeks?
yeah.
He's maybe probably the quarterback one. Deal him away. Deal him away. Get a ransom for him. Go crazy. Get a lot in return, and be happy with doing that, because I think Josh Allen will be one of those quarterbacks. Him and Lamar Jackson, I'm kind of back and forth on how will the end of their season look? Will they
Yeah.
falter in that critical championship, fantasy championship winning time? And that's where I have worry now. And looking at the offense, right? A rookie Keon Coleman, we don't know how he's going to hit. Khalil Shakir, we've never seen it. We've seen brief flashes as a wide receiver 3 for the Bills. Curtis Samuel he has turf toe. Obviously you were pretty high on him. I'm pretty high on him
Yep.
heading into the season. Turf toe during training camp makes me lower him a little bit. And then they have Kincaid, we're very happy with. James Cook, very happy with. But we'll see. He's one of the guys I'm kind of holding on. I'm not picking at him at where he's going. Obviously, his ADP is quarterback 1, early third round. I'm waiting past the third round to pick a quarterback, and that's why I'm usually, if Jalen Hurts is falling behind him, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, just about all those guys if I can wait a round or two over a guy like Josh Allen, because he's getting drafted where he was last year, but his talent around him is much worse. So that's what I have on Josh Allen. And I know you like this guy a lot, so I'm gonna let you take number 2.
Oh, number 2, Justin. Hey, can I say he's the second best quarterback of all time, Justin? I mean, come on, we have to
Yeah.
mention this guy. 2-time reigning MVP, I think or 2-time Super Bowl reigning MVP. I think you know where I'm going with this. It's Patrick Mahomes and Justin. I mean, where do I even start there with the targets he has there in Kansas City? I mean, let's just get right into it. First of all, he has a now pretty good rushing game, but now that opens up the play action. He still has the future Hall of Famer in Travis Kelce. And then obviously there's some injuries there with Marquise Hollywood Brown. When he's healthy, he boosts up some Mahomes value. We love Xavier Worthy, who's coming into the season great. No injuries. He's their guy that they drafted. They're excited. Obviously, it doesn't look like anything's going to happen with Rashee Rice, which hopefully everything works out for him and hopefully he plays. But when he plays Justin, that's another target that Mahomes can get into. That's already 3 weapons. You're giving the best quarterback currently in the league right now so many great targets. Now, Justin, which I find interesting, is they bring back Juju Smith-Schuster, who, yes, he's old, he's getting up there, but as a wide receiver 4 to 5 with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid offense, I mean, hey, you never know what's going to happen. I'm looking at that. They still have McCole Hardman, who caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, those are just targets all over the field for Mahomes. And you can't forget the guys like Sky Moore, who haven't had their big breakout yet. But Andy Reid, the best coach of all time, or one of the best coaches of all time. You can argue that he's top 3.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the best offensive minds we'll ever see. You can say 1 or 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as well as the second best quarterback of all time, I think, and the best quarterback right now in fantasy and everything. He's the best quarterback right now. Mahomes, with that talent, they won a 3-peat. Mahomes wants to win MVP. It only just makes sense that he's, if not 1, definitely 2, right? Because that offense is set up perfectly for him, Justin. I have him winning the MVP. If we had stat predictions today, I would have him at 50 to 52 passing touchdowns.
Wow.
As well as a couple rushing. Mahomes is not a big rushing quarterback. He'll get 3 to 4 a season, right? He'll get 3 to 4. So we're
Sure.
talking 55 total touchdowns for Mr. Mahomes, and I feel like he'll be unanimous MVP. That's my prediction. Um, but definitely as fantasy, he's going to be in games that he wants to prove he's the best quarterback, boosts his fantasy value. Definitely love Mahomes this year.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have some lofty projections for him, which would be phenomenal. If you hear this, Dwayne Nation, pick Patrick Mahomes, and if he gets to that 50 mark, he will be the best quarterback in fantasy football. Obviously,
Mhm.
in normal regular NFL football, he will as
Absolutely.
well win MVPs, maybe a Super Bowl again.
Yeah. I will
He's got it.
say, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry. I
No,
would just
go ahead.
say, I would just say he probably won't be playing week 18. So if you have a fantasy championship in week 18, you got to go somewhere else. But definitely from weeks 1 to 17, he'll be playing. That's all I'll
And
say.
and quick PSA: if you guys have a championship in Week 18, change it to Week 17.
Yeah, come on,
Don't
guys. Let's
screw up.
do it.
Don't ruin your poor league. Like a team that has Patrick Mahomes and is killing it and deserves to be champ because they picked a great team, and they'll lose because they decided to play their championship in Week 18 where Patrick Mahomes is sitting out. Don't do
Yeah,
that. Don't do that to
don't do-
yourselves. But yeah, no.
absolutely.
Patrick Mahomes with the improved wide receivers is kind of the one of the biggest sells to me.
Mhm.
Obviously, he lost Tyreek, and then his fantasy was kind of in that 5 to 8 quarterback range, and he wasn't never hitting where we were drafting because he was going in the top 3. This year's
Yeah,
very different. Rashee Rice, it will be around this season. We thought he might
yeah,
be suspended. He's not
thankfully, yeah,
not for 2024. Xavier Worthy has looked great in the preseason. Super speedy guy that really expands the field for Patrick
yeah,
Mahomes. And then Hollywood will be back within the first few weeks of the season, which I don't have big hopes for him in his own, individual fantasy value, but for Patrick Mahomes, it will be very helpful. And
yeah.
then of course Travis Kelce, a really strong offensive line. The defense was so phenomenal last year. I expect them the way that they were last year, they have to go just a little bit down, which makes Mahomes to me go a little bit up, kind of thing.
Agreed. Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
so Mahomes at quarterback 2, and then I think we don't have to sugarcoat it or hide who the quarterback 1 is. It is Philadelphia Eagles' own Jalen Hurts, and just there should be so much improvement with this team. Even in the games, let me actually you talk about Jalen Hurts. I'm going to come back with a stat.
I just got to say this, Justin. Jalen Hurts, I'm so excited about what Jalen Hurts can do from an offensive perspective. Justin, Kellen Moore takes over the offensive play calling there. They add Saquon Barkley. I mean, Saquon Barkley is like one of the best two-way running backs. He can receive it. He can rush it. I mean, he can have 100 yards in both categories. I mean, he's such an electrifying running back out of the backfield. That boosts Jalen Hurts' value because if Saquon is not, doing so well in the rushing game, I am so confident that Kellen Moore can dial up a play to get a passing play. Justin, historically, Saquon Barkley has been great in rushing as he's been receiving it. I mean, he can take it anywhere as long as he has the football. He's able to score from distance. Not only that, you have AJ Brown, who was a top 5, fantasy wide receiver last year, and then we're looking at Devontae Smith, who you and I love this year. You sniped
Yeah,
him from me, Justin.
I did.
You
I did.
sniped him from me in one of our drafts, but I got someone else that I was excited about, so it's okay. I forgive you, Justin. I forgive you. But we have one more. We have one more draft, so I just want to say, Dewey
That's right.
Nation, tell Jay Pay to not pick Devontae Smith here in our next draft this week
No
because
problem.
I need Devontae Smith in this draft. Anyways, we have that. Dallas Goedert. When he's healthy, he's missed a lot of games in the past couple seasons, but when he's healthy, he's proved to be the number 1 guy there in Philly as well. I'm not really worried about what they have there in the depth chart with tight ends. And then they just traded for Jahan Dotson. And it's just Jalen Hurts' rushing ability as well as a fantasy quarterback is so elite. He's so elusive. He's able to score with plays that you didn't think were possible. And he's expected to lead this Philadelphia team to the 1 seed all year in Philly Nation. You know how they are in Philly over there in
Yeah.
Lincoln. And, I know how they are. And so they want to be the best all year and as well as going into the playoffs. So that provides Jalen Hurts to not mess up one game at all. But he is a quarterback that I believe in. He's going to be winning football games and he's going to be winning fantasy games. That is for sure going to be happening this season.
And what I wanted to look up, so when I passed it off to you, I looked up something just to see how Jalen Hurts did during the Philadelphia collapse. Like it's going to be toted in history of how a
Yeah.
team that was 10-1 fell off the face of the earth, right? And it was awful. Just about every Eagles players struggled. Fantasy players everybody was upset.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts was still the quarterback one during those weeks. Of all quarterbacks, he was still the top guy from weeks 11 to 17. That's right in the thick of where nothing was working well for the Philadelphia Eagles. And that just highlights how this offense is going to get way better. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be way better. We're not going to see that kind of display we saw last year,
Yeah.
and that just makes me more certain that Jalen Hurts will be the quarterback one. He
Yeah.
gets Saquon Barkley out of the backfield. He gets Jahan Dotson. Of course, he has A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Both get extensions. They're sticking
Yeah.
around. The team's hungry for a championship because they were close a couple years ago. And then they were at the top of the league, 10-1, and things went to crap. Nick Sirianni's fighting for his job. I mean, I couldn't be more confident in a number one at a position besides Christian McCaffrey. So,
Yeah.
and I'd even argue that I'm even higher and Jalen Hurts being the number one at his position than McCaffrey ending the season as number one at his position.
Yeah.
That's how
Absolutely.
confident I am in Jalen Hurts. And the fact that he's going behind guys like Josh Allen makes me super happy. Let your league mates pick Josh Allen and then scoop up Jalen Hurts. If he
Absolutely.
somehow can fall into the fourth round, that is a steal of all steals. So don't be
Yeah.
too scared. I know there's quarterbacks where you can wait on, like we mentioned at the very beginning at the top of the show, but Jalen Hurts, pick him.
No, I have to finish off right there. I just have to say that I am a Jalen Hurts owner, Justin. I had to get him in one of our drafts. We had two this past weekend. I was happy with just getting him in one. I didn't have to get him in both leagues, Justin, but I got him in one of our leagues. I'm excited. And that's going to be a league that I'm going to be keeping close attention. 3 leagues. Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy, Justin. He has one of the best wideouts there. He's a winner. He's a great rushing quarterback. And, hey, the Eagles have to be sensational all year. They just have to. That's the expectation. You're an Eagles fan. I'm a secondary kind of Eagles fan. I like the Eagles there under the Texans. So I got expectations too for my second favorite team. So fly Eagles, fly, and hey, let's go Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and last thing before we wrap up the episode, Kellen Moore is the new offensive coordinator, right? So that's an improvement already off of last year.
Yeah.
And in the games where Justin Herbert was healthy, he was the quarterback 5. So that's a guy who doesn't run, who doesn't get double-digit touchdowns on the ground like Jalen Hurts does, and doesn't have the targets that Jalen Hurts does. Doesn't have the offensive line that Jalen Hurts does.
Absolutely.
Now has a coach like Jalen Hurts, better than Jalen Hurts with Harbaugh, but last year a worse coach in Brandon Staley. So Jalen Hurts has everything better, and Justin Herbert was the quarterback 5. So it's just there's so many things. To me, he's just about bulletproof in fantasy, barring injury. So Jalen Hurts super high on. Just to go over it again, we had Jordan Love at 10. Joe Burrow comes in at 9. Kyler Murray at 8. Anthony Richardson at 7. Dak Prescott comes in at 6. C.J. Stroud starts off the top 5. Lamar Jackson at 4. Josh Allen at 3. Patrick Mahomes gets at 2. And Jalen Hurts is number 1. Those are our top 10 quarterbacks. Just right outside of that, we had Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams, Matt Stafford, and Kirk Cousins. Those are the next, 6 or 7 guys I rattled off just for you guys to keep it in your heads. But yeah, that's our quarterbacks episode. We got 3 more coming to you guys. We even want to do a bold predictions episode before week 1 gets underway. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this right in time for drafts. Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dewey Nation, this was such a fun episode to do. Fantasy season is officially upon us, just less than a week and a half away from kickoff. And then from that big Sunday weekend, not to mention that Friday night game there in Brazil. So, fantasy is just around the corner. It's a week away, but until then, Justin, Dewey Nation, you got to stick with us for the next week, guys. If you're watching, you need to know what's going up until next, Thursday kickoff as well as the weekend. So, Dewey Nation, if you're new here, keep watching because, hey, we want to keep you entertained until kickoff. You know what I'm saying, Justin? Right. Everybody's ready for fantasy, but, hey, we'll keep you in company on who to draft, who not to draft, who's going to break out, and we got it all for you in Dewey Nation. So, Justin, on to the next episode, and as always,
peace.